Brilliant,
Fantastic.
excellent.
Great.
Yeah, how are your weekends going?
Can't complain.
Yeah,
I'm on
not
vacation
much.
this week, so I am enjoying life.
Nice, nice, nice.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I am. The sun is shining, which is obviously always good, and us Brits like to always talk about the weather. But it's really nice. And Sunday's going well.
Great.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Damn it, Tyler, I almost said it.
You almost said it.
Sorry, we were just saying, Chris, before you come on over. What's it you said, fella?
So my thing that I normally say is, all right, so let's just jump right into it and get going. And I almost said it and then paused. And I was like, damn it, I don't have anything else to say.
That's good. I'm happy to jump right into it.
All right, so let's get into it. Shut up, Tyler. So essentially, we just want to do a conversation, get to know a little bit more about you and the brand that you started, the company you started. And yeah, I think we'll kind of kick it off and allow you to explain what you do, a little bit of background about Freestar, yeah. Just kind of a general introduction to it and who you are, your relationship to the company. And then we'll dive in and get into a little bit more background and have a conversation with some good brews.
Perfect.
Conversation,
yeah.
if I can talk.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I've got Tyler very kindly sent over the list of questions. So obviously, those questions are all pretty standard. I'm not forgetting anything like that. But by all means, ask any others, and hopefully I give good responses. Throw me a couple of curveballs, and hopefully I'll field them all right.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
I am just moving things around to make sure that we don't have any echo.
Are you good to
Are you
go?
recording, Chris?
What?
So
I
you're
am
recording.
recording. I did click record on this one, so I haven't screwed it up yet.
We may as well start by just the origin of the company, if you don't mind, like the name and stuff.
So the name. So we actually the name came about 18 months after we actually started. The sort of first, when the idea first came to us, because actually, let's go back to the beginning when the idea. So it was about 3.5 years ago in January 2017, I think it was. It was January. We weren't actually doing Dry January, but we were great mates, still are great mates. I think Charlie and Felix would corroborate that. And we were meeting up on a Tuesday night with busy Wednesdays ahead of ourselves. At that time, I was working for a popcorn brand called Propercorn, which is pretty big in the UK and across Europe. Was still a startup when I joined, and it's probably they've continued to do really well, and it's probably now sort of they do about 20 million revenue business. But it was startup business, loving life there, and also getting a great understanding of the food and drink scene in the UK. Felix was working at Sipsmith, which is a gin brand, and Charlie was working at Tesla. So great brands, all of us working for and really enjoying working for them. Therefore, when we met up on a Tuesday night, we had busy Wednesdays ahead of ourselves, so still wanted to stay fresh the next day. But we just didn't want to drink alcohol as a result. And that didn't mean that we wanted our entire night to be dominated by drinking water or soft drinks or soda and limes. We still wanted to celebrate that occasion of being together with, an adult drink or a complex tasting drink. So that night we reached for an alcohol-free beer, and unfortunately felt pretty shortchanged by the alcohol-free beer that we had that night. The flavor was great for about a second, and it quite quickly disappeared. And what returned was something quite distasteful and not pleasant at all, and certainly not the kind of complexity in the drink that we tried that night that we were used to with having any of the other alcoholic drinks that we would drink normally. Charlie, Felix, and I all still drink alcohol, but we just don't want to drink alcohol every night, and that was one of them. So when we had that alcohol-free beer, didn't like it. And I thought, well, how hard could it truly be to create a delicious alcohol-free beer ourselves? Thank God we didn't know the answer at that stage, because it was a lot harder than we anticipated. So we from that moment, we're like, right, let's understand how we create an alcohol-free beer. None of us had ever brewed beer, even in a homebrew kit, so we didn't have any understanding of how to brew beer at all, which is a really difficult craft in and of itself, and then had no understanding about how to create an alcohol-free beer at all. So when we first understood that how everyone made alcohol-free beer, it was broadly start with beer and then remove the alcohol, and that process seemed to sort of make sense given what we tried. It's like that feels as if the product we tried had somehow had some element removed from it, because it felt a bit ghost-like. There was no middle to it, and so we thought that process didn't make any sense to us. I mean, obviously it's a process that a lot of people have got a lot better at, and actually there are just so many great alcohol-free beers that you drink these days, which is great. I suppose maybe we tried one of them 3.5 years ago, we wouldn't have found ourselves on this journey. So I was lucky that we didn't try one of those great ones. But we thought, right, we can do this in a very, very different way. If we don't need to brew beer to create an alcoholic beer, and we just want to create a delicious beer tasting product that's never had alcohol in it, do we really need to have beer in the product at any alcohol in the beer at any stage? And that was something we sort of a question we found out sort of a few months into starting on the journey. And we then at that stage decided we needed a bit of help. Obviously we didn't have any brewing expertise, we didn't have any other drink making expertise within us, so we then got a bit of help by asking some help from the guy who used to head up the research and development team at Diageo, the huge drinks conglomerate, and he's actually left there now and has made various other great alcohol-free drinks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Seedlip, but he had made the entire Seedlip range. And his dad actually made Bailey's, obviously not an alcohol-free product, an alcohol-full product, but their entire family is, built around the wizardry of creating amazing drinks. And he grew up in Diageo, or started his career in Diageo, and now actually most of his products are alcohol-free. And we posed that question to him, which was, if we want to create a delicious alcohol-free beer, do we need to have alcohol in the the process at any stage? And he said, and is that going to be helpful? And he said, you've got a much better chance of creating a delicious product if you don't ferment beer, ferment the yeast, and then have to remove the alcohol. So we thought, okay, brilliant. That sounds great. How quickly can you do that for us? And he said, oh, that will take me 2 months. We're like, perfect. We'll hand in our notices tomorrow. And he's like, whoa, whatever you do not hand in your notices tomorrow, because this is going to take longer than 2 months. And we're like, okay, fair enough. And so from that stage, it was, that was after a few months of, that was probably around April, May time. And from then, it still took us until January 2019. So a full 2 years after we'd had that initial sort of light bulb moment, to finding the recipe that we really liked in the kitchen. And we say, right, now we're ready to, basically manufacture this product at scale. And so then we found a manufacturer and handed in our notice at the same time, and did our first production run in May of last year. And yeah, so that's really how the sort of story came to being. The name Freestar was something that certainly didn't happen for a while, and was, as the kitchen trials went on and on and on, we definitely didn't feel the pressure to get a name, because we never felt particularly close in the first year. But I think it was about 12 to 18 months in that we thought, actually, we obviously need to find a name for this. And nothing, we spent, the odd people would, on our group WhatsApp, someone would say some ridiculous name, and that they particularly happened to love that day, and the other two would be like, there's no way we're calling it that. And so then we went through various weird exercises, read lots of books about, I remember reading the book, the Innocent Founders book, about how they sort of chose a name, and that didn't work. And then in the end, we just wrote all of the list of great different names. And in the end, we decided that Freestar really work, because free is obviously a nod to alcohol free, but also a freedom of choice. So at the moment, if you go out and you don't want to drink alcohol, your choices are incredibly limited, and you don't want to just have to choose a lemonade or water. What you want is a great array of amazing alcohol-free drinks, like what meets you when you're having an alcohol-full evening. And so Free is a nod to freedom of choice as well as alcohol-free, and then Star is a nod to beer. So Star is actually it's prevalent throughout so many different beer brands, be that Stella Artois, Star or Prum, and every single national beer seems to be something Star. Obviously the Heineken Star, and so Star was our kind of nod to beer, being Freestar being one of our the first drink, and then initially we had thought that maybe we would expand that to being when we expand beyond beer to have Free something else. So that's where Freestar comes from. A very long-winded answer.
No, but can I ask, what was the bad beer that you tried in the pub on the Tuesday night?
We definitely don't share that information, because actually, even though it was distasteful to us, there are plenty of other people that will find it great, and it's that beer in particular has been the staple of a lot of people who've been pioneering the category. I couldn't confirm or deny.
And what was the name of the person who owns Seedlip that helps you out?
Yeah, so that business is called Alchemista, and the guy is called Anthony Wilson. They're an amazing, just sort of, he's a drinks wizard, or he likes to call himself a liquid engineer, which was a term I'd never heard before, but we call him a bit of a wizard.
And what made his decision to help you guys out when he was already doing his own thing?
Oh, so he's a product developer or drinks advisor. So this is just another project for him, like the project for Seedlip, and he still consults to Diageo for specific drinks projects that they have going, and he will work with other drinks brands to help them develop drinks. So he this was a product development brief for him.
Interesting. And so your process, so do you actually ferment the beer, or do you not produce any alcohol at all? So that's kind of the...
Yeah, so we as I mentioned, none of us had any brewing expertise at all, which was initially, we were like, oh my God, this is a mountain for us to climb, because we don't have any idea how to make beer. Therefore, and when we first understood how all other alcohol-free beers were made, we're like, well, we don't know how to make beer. We're so far behind being able to understand how to make alcohol-free beer. But in the end, it turned out to be a bit of a blessing, because we weren't encumbered by thinking that that this is the only way to create a great beer flavor. And so at that stage, we then set about going like, well, we obviously met Anthony, and he helped us. Said, right, we've got thousands of different flavors and natural ingredients. One thing I will mention is Freestar is always going to be 100% natural ingredients, always has been, and any other products we bring out will always be made from 100% natural ingredients. But there are just such a huge array of natural ingredients at our fingertips, that you can create so many wonderful complex flavors with them. But none of the other brewers have been doing it, because they've always been thinking, well, we've got beer, excess capacity of beer, we might as well dealkalize it, or use some kind of lazy yeast to only part ferment the beer. All of which is, the techniques around those have got just so much better. But we thought, right, we're not going to use those particular techniques. We don't need to come at it through a fermentation process. And we also very quickly understood that if we don't need to ferment, that we can make a process that is a lot more sustainable. So it took us obviously 2 years, and we probably tasted, I think it was about 400 different recipes in the kitchen over those 2 years. But we finally got the recipe ready. And actually, to be fair, once we launched, we then got a lot of feedback and actually removed 4 citrus fruits from it. Now it has no citrus fruits in it. And so the sort of recipe improvements have continued. But we realized that, once we got that recipe right, we just add the ingredients to the top of a tank. And 24 hours later, after cooling and carbonating that tank, we can produce our beer, as opposed to up to 2 months with a fermentation process. And also everything that you put into the top of the tank, you then empty at the bottom into cans, kegs, or bottles, and the only wastage is what is left on the inside of the tank and in the inside of the pipes. So our energy usage, our water usage, our CO2 emissions, and our wastage is just so much lower than any other beer production process, because we have the benefit of not being able to go through the fermentation process, which is enormously beneficial and means, and as you mentioned on the email, we've got this sustainability credential, which is absolutely at the core of the business, and have just been certified as a B Corp. And the two, we didn't think, right, we want to be, we've done this process, now should we be a B Corp? The two were sort of fortuitously linked, and actually we knew we wanted to create a much more efficient process, and sort of found out about the B Corp process at the same time, and it married up quite nicely. But we really wanted to create a sustainable business, and the fact that our beer production technique not only created a great flavor, incredibly complex, but was also incredibly sustainable, was enormously beneficial. And actually it came at a time 2 years in, when we were still perfecting the recipe, or just under 2 years in. There's, as you would imagine, a fair amount of doubt that goes on in your head as to whether this project is viable. But as we got closer and closer and realized that we can create this recipe, and it can create a delicious product, and also this production method is going to be infinitely more sustainable, that was really added fuel to our fire to be like, what, we've got to make sure we can get this done, because it is going to be something really quite special.
And then legally, since you don't ferment, so is it really isn't an actual beer then legally, or is it kind of just its own thing? It's like a malt beverage,
hop infused drink,
yeah. Legally, whether it is a beer sort of obviously is defined by the legals of or the law prevailing in each individual country that we want to sell it. In the UK, legally, what a beer is we can still call it a beer. I think in Germany, we can't call it a beer because of various things, but or one in particular thing, which is I think it's the fermentation. But ultimately, our feeling is legally is not necessarily correct for our consumers. Ultimately, what we want to do is create a great alcohol-free drink that people, when they don't want to drink that round, that evening, that week, and they're at the pub or socializing or at home or doing whatever they want to be doing, that they can have a great beer flavor or great beer with no alcohol in it, so they can still enjoy that moment exactly the same way as if it had alcohol in it, but that they can do whatever it is that they want to do afterwards, or not get drunk, or really give them exactly that same complex drinking sensation and that same feeling of being part of the moment that they get from drinking an alcoholic drink.
Can you?
And not to, you go, Chris.
I was just going to ask. Can you describe that flagship beer that you have, like the flavors of it, and what the check boxes and check marks were that you wanted to hit in that first recipe? So what's the main beer, Freestar, and how did you decide that that's the flavor we want?
Yeah, so for us, we always wanted to aim for a lager style. So, and even though I agree it's not lagered, so so obviously that will be slightly polarizing for some people to hear me say we've created a lager.
We're all about polarization here, so you're fine.
Nice. So we wanted to create, a lager ultimately is the most consumed alcoholic beer drink in the world. So we wanted to create something that was, easily accessible for the majority of beer drinkers to drink. That's why we chose a lager style. So it's lighter, and its color and head is completely lager-like, and the carbonation is supposed to be the same kind of lager style carbonation. The flavor is, so what we always wanted to do is create something that was complex from start to finish. And so as I mentioned, when we first tried that alcohol-free beer together, we were very impressed with how great the first initial hit of beer was, but then the thinness, or just the disappearance of beer, that was one thing that hit us more than anything else. And actually, we said that is, that lack of thinness, or creating mouthfeel, or a complexity as well, all really are the same thing. So we wanted to create something that was full of flavor from that first moment that you smell the beer in your nose, and then take the first sensation on your tongue. We wanted that flavor journey to be full from that start to a long dry finish. So we were absolutely adamant to really make sure that we call it mouthfeel, which is a term I didn't use 3 years ago, but now I seem to use every single day, is that it had good mouthfeel. And basically all alcoholic drinks really have good mouthfeel, and it's sort of pressure, sensation, taste, all rolled into one sensation is what I'm trying to describe with mouthfeel. Coca-Cola actually has really good mouthfeel, sort of, it fills your entire mouth with pressure and flavor and sensation all in one go. And so we spend a lot of time right at the end trying to mimic that. The style is, we said we wanted it to be sort of Pilsner-like, but then very quickly realized that we wanted still a bit of fruitiness in it to add to the complexity, which is why there is, we describe it as a lager with a citrus edge, and that fruitiness comes through and really adds to the complexity of it. It's not a Radler or any kind of, it's not so overpowering that it's a fruit beer, but there's a definite citrus element to it, which just adds to the complexity of it and really helps give it its own identity.
And was your goal making it maybe not as so mimicking alcoholic beers, but more so making it your own, but still having that alcoholic vibe to it, right? To make it comparable at least, but still it's its own unique product.
Yes, exactly, Tyler. So it was we didn't set out to just mimic a beer. We wanted something to be identifiable as its own flavor, and something that our fans could be like, listen, I'm having a Freestar, and I feel this is a Freestar moment for me, and it's similar enough to a beer that it's recognizable flavor profile, but definitely its own flavor and complex. And really, drinks are such an amazing consumable, more so than any food, really. That what you order at a bar is a real extension of yourself, and is a real, like, this is the kind of person I am. I'm ordering a martini on the rocks, or I'm ordering a Freestar. And we felt that if we could create something that was born out of beer, but produced in our own unique way and flavored in a unique way, but an accessible flavor completely, and undeniably a delicious drink, that would allow people to really enjoy that moment, or that round, or that evening, where they're not drinking alcohol, but could feel as if they're having something as interesting or as complex or as proudly a part of them in a drink in that round.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
That's
incredible.
You guys, do you all of you drink alcohol at some stage? Or I was reading a bit on the website. Do you all drink alcohol at some stage, or you're all NA?
I don't drink alcohol at all. No.
Okay.
I do.
I think, yeah, Chris and I are kind of the same scenario. We just drink. I mean, I drink occasionally. He might drink a little bit more than me, but it's just more of like the occasion. Like, we don't mind drinking.
Yeah, in the last couple months, I've gone down from drinking 1 or 2 beers a night to maybe 3 beers a week type of thing. Just health reasons, and
Yeah, I mean, there seem to be just a never-endingly, increasingly number of times. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm an alcohol drinker, but there are just more and more occasions where I would normally have drunk alcohol, but I really, I don't want to drink alcohol in that round. and that fits into home occasions or bar occasions, restaurants occasions, and it just obviously it's highlighted by the fact I'm creating an alcohol. Charlie, Felix, and I are creating an alcohol-free brand, but you just realize that there are so many more times when you just don't want to have alcohol, and you just are left with a lack of choice. So it's so great to see. I mean, there are just so many other great brands in not just the beer space but the spirit space, creating just amazing brands to sit alongside your Hendrix and your Sipsmith and your Beavertowns and your Heinekens. I mean, we always say that we're looking forward to, we've always put a 10-year horizon on it, which some people laugh at and some people think is more achievable. But you get to a bar in 10 years anywhere across, we use the UK because obviously we live in the UK, you go to a bar anywhere and it will be 50-50 options. If you're not having alcohol, you have got an amazing array, just as amazing array of drinks for you. And so you're going to a restaurant, you could have something to start, which is amazing aperitif, which is alcohol free. I know actually Seedlip brought out their Acorn ones, which are amazing as well. So we're almost there with them. And then just a great compare to have with food, and then finishing off with some really interesting, maybe umami drink that you would savor like a whiskey, which is again alcohol free. And actually, if you're having a whole evening without alcohol, actually every single drinks decision you make can be as interesting as an alcohol full one. And yeah, we hope that and see that horizon is 10 years away.
And how do you feel with your product, like having an upper hand on others? So there's so many different options in the UK. So what makes yours, like better than theirs, right?
Yeah, so we, I mean, as I mentioned, our production process is completely different. So we have completely rethought how to make alcohol-free beer, which is gives a much better flavor, we think. So, and that was validated by the fact that we won the World Beer Awards within 2 or 3 months of launching. So we won the World Beer Awards towards the back end of last year, which was amazing. And
can you expand upon that experience, because that's pretty unique? I don't know anything about that. So that'd be
yes. So the World Beer Awards is there are, to be fair, a lot of awards that the World Beer Awards give out. We entered the UK flavored low alcohol category and won it, and got gold in the UK. We didn't win the global one. Athletic Brewing won the global one, which are, as I know you guys know, a fantastic beer as well. So we don't mind coming second to them. But we entered our beer into that in the summer of last year, and then got the gold in the UK, which was great, and then really validated our assumption that not only we thought it was a great beer, but that these professional judges thought it was as well.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
But so yeah, in terms of, so we make it very differently, which means that we get this complexity from start to finish, and that we get this full mouthfeel from the start to the finish of the drink. And then on top of that, we do have all of the sustainability credentials and other brilliant benefits to creating our beer exactly the way we want it to. So our production process uses 80% less water. We create 70% less waste. We actually use 80% less energy, and our CO2 emissions are about just over 90% less than any other beer production technique, purely because we can do our manufacturing in a day, which is amazing and something that we're really proud of. Obviously, it needs to taste great, which it does, but it also has other benefits to it, which is it's vegan friendly, it's gluten free, and it's only 62 calories, which are obviously other reasons why people are looking to drink our product, and something we also hold very dear as well.
That's
I think
awesome.
it's crazy that it's gluten free. That's probably the most impressive part about it, in my opinion, is that it's gluten free. So you don't have any barley or anything like we.
So yeah, we do actually have malted barley in it, but we use a malted barley extract, and we are very specific with the malted barley that we use, so that the gluten content is low. So to be gluten free, in the UK, this is, I'm not 100% sure on all of the other definitions, but they will be similar. But to be gluten-free in the UK, you need to have less than 20 parts per million of gluten content. Our content is less than 10. So we are well within our rights to be calling ourselves gluten-free in the UK. And that's because we use a specific type of malted barley. And yeah, so because we don't have to ferment, it's actually a lot easier for us to create a gluten-free beer. There are actually a lot of other gluten-free, alcohol-free beers, which is really impressive. I don't actually know how they managed to make them gluten-free, but there are a couple. Big Drop do one. I'm pretty sure Big Drop do one, and there are some other brands as well that do one. But yeah, no, gluten-free is something we're really proud of. And we know that it's, I'm not celiac, and neither are Charlie and Felix. We know it's incredibly hard to find gluten-free products if in the beer category if you are celiac.
Yeah, that's one of the main issues that I always get from other people. They're always wondering what options are there out there, and there's not many, especially in the U.S. It's such a small market, let alone having gluten-free, non-alcoholic beer. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's very niche. It really is. Were your family and friends kind of skeptical of this, or were they supportive, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. Really good question. So, when you first come up, you start telling your family and friends, you obviously pick the ones that you think are going to be most supportive. Obviously, you only have a few family members, so you have to tell them all pretty immediately. And they were, there was healthy skepticism and just challenges initially. My parents very nervous about me making a decision to go out of full-time employment. But I'm not too sure when the penny dropped for them. But once they realized, I didn't think it was necessarily that I, gave them a good business plan, because I've never showed them a business plan. But once they realized that this is my family, once they realized that, you're all in for this, then they are sort of, blindly supportive. And actually that's just what you need, because there are so many, it's so difficult to know, whether you're making the right decision, and one that we all three, Charlie, Felix and I, all have really positive days and really negative days. And, it's one bit of negative feedback that you receive, about the product can really knock you. And then another, a bit of positive feedback can really elevate you. But unfortunately, sometimes you learn to be numb to the positive ones and always listen to the negative ones. But really, getting support from your family, which is what we've all got once we were sort of a few 6 or so months down the line, that blind support is just so helpful, because you do just need people behind the scenes. My wife is incredibly supportive of me, and I know that I can just, if I'm having a tough day, just either rant to her and she'll just listen, or just say, listen, I need a bit of positive feedback from you, and equally she will provide that blind positive feedback that I need.
I feel like all of us can relate, really.
Absolutely.
Definitely, by all means.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that each day? Some days are. Some people wake up some days and like, we're gonna change the world, and the next day you're like, I don't know what we're doing.
What the hell did I get involved in, and why?
Yeah. But it's important. We find, and actually that's the great thing about, like you guys are three, is that, more often than not, one of you may be down, but the other two will be up, so that you guys can sort of support each other, and actually, and it goes beyond just supporting mood swings. It's actually, right, I've got this outlandish idea for this. What do you guys think? It's like, actually, you know what, that's got legs. Or whoa, easy on the alcohol, full beers.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that between the three of us, and I think we do a great job of making sure we're all staying focused on what we need. And I think the biggest part of that is attributed to our communication.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely communication is so important.
Yeah,
I think this community in general produces, more of a positive vibe with all of us. So I think in general we're more positive because we're involved in this type of community with non-alcoholic beverages. So yeah, I think that helps as well. There's more of a positive atmosphere always, because we're always promoting health or just bettering ourselves. I think that's probably those things.
Yeah, and there is that sort of there is still a stigma around not drinking alcohol, and it used to be 10 years ago awful, where you basically couldn't order an alcohol-free beer in front of anyone publicly. Maybe that was just my friends, but I certainly think in the last 10 years people are much more confident to be saying ordering an alcohol-free beer in front of friends, and people are much more understanding. You may get, oh, why are you ordering an alcohol-free beer? And the response is like, well, I don't want to drink this night or whatever, and people will leave it at that. But what would be, what is great is really where we want to get to in 5 to 10 years time, where actually people see alcohol-full drinks and alcohol-free drinks as exactly the same experience, and actually there is no concept of alcohol-free being in any way a compromise. And there are just so many great alcohol-free options for you to drink in that moment, that people will be like, okay, well, oh, you're drinking alcohol full tonight, well, that's obviously because you don't have anything to do tomorrow, and you're feeling very relaxed about it, and that's fine. And so you can afford to sort of maybe enjoy the moment a bit more, and therefore get tipsy. But ultimately everyone who's having an alcohol-free drink knows that they're having exactly the same experience, and it's completely acknowledged by all parties. And what's interesting is actually seeing these in the I have about 10 more minutes, if is that all right? If
absolutely.
Do you I feel as if I have downloaded or just spoken at you guys in a completely incoherent manner.
That's exactly what we want. We're sick and tired of hearing our voices. We want to hear your voices and not ours.
Okay. Well, as long as you think some of it is publishable, I'm happy.
Yeah. And I did want you to go back to the whole process of making it and you working with Anthony, right? That was his name, correct? And did you go to him and help him out, or did he just do it all on his own and you asked for your input? I kind of want to know more about that, because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we spent a while writing up a brief of exactly, we said, right, we broke it up into, the nose, the palate, the finish, the primary, the first taste sensation, the carbonation, etc. And all of those 5 separate elements, we then provided 3 or 4 different examples of beer. They were all beers, alcohol-full beers, but they could have been a soft drink, or they could have been anything. But we really shared with him exactly what we wanted him to develop in terms of each individual element of that within the beer. And then he went away for a while and was like, okay, well, I think we could go down these kind of routes with these kind of ingredients. And so we then collaborated on that and understood which kind of ingredients would work better, and asked a few questions here and there. He was like, are you absolutely set on using natural ingredients? And we said, we are absolutely set on using natural ingredients. And then he came back with, I think it was 3 or 4 separate routes, and then 3 or 4 different elements with different recipes within each route. And then we tried them all and said, right, we like these particular elements of this. Once we were at that stage, it was like, right, now we try and sort of, we basically didn't bring back in any other sort of, examples in the real world. It was like, right, let's just completely use these elements of these particular routes and try and forge them together. And then it was, constantly going backwards and forwards, and, we would then actually be like, you know what, let's come into the kitchen together and work with all these different flavors together and be like, okay, we need to dial this up and dial that up. And there were just, it was the first time we'd done it, and you simply don't realize how complex it is, because our recipe now has over 15 ingredients, and you change one of those ingredients by 10%, and it has just, it doesn't just affect one small element of it. It affects so much of it, because there are there's no obviously salt in it, but much like when you elevate the salt, it brings out absolutely every single element. So certain other ingredients completely impact other ingredients and help them bring, come out more, or just, you'll bring something up by 10% and it will completely override another particular element. So it was literally just constant game of understanding how each individual ingredient impacted the recipe and went up and down and added a few and then took a few out. And as I mentioned, when we first started, we had lemon, lime, bergamot and pomelo for citrus fruits, and for quite, citrus fruit actually, to be fair, is quite an overpowering sensation. So all of those in it made our beer very different to anything anyone had experienced at all from a beer. And people were like, oh, that is, some people absolutely loved it, but the majority of them were like, I don't actually drink beer at all. And I do like that. And it was probably closer to a kombucha because it was so tart. And actually the bergamot and something else in it, we never really found out what it was, but the bergamot itself was creating a bit of a tomato sensation on the nose for a lot of people, which is not what you expect when you pick up a beer. I know there are various Czech beers which are deliberately tomato based, but something that's supposed to be a bit more mainstream lager flavored is not supposed to remind you of spaghetti hoops, which it did with certain people. And we got a fair amount of backlash from that when we first launched it. A lot of people were like, I don't feel as if I should be having spaghetti hoops with my beer. So we were like, oh God, okay, got to change this. And then removed all of the citrus elements, and it luckily also took away that tomato element on the nose as well.
Wow. So I know you're going to have to go soon. So to conclude this, can you just tell us about, what does the future look like for Freestar? Where can you find your guys' beer?
What are some upcoming beers that you have? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, well, so the future, this is our first Halo product, and I haven't drunk it not because I don't love it, but because I've been speaking so much. But we will stick with this recipe for, this will be our main recipe. We'll bring out other products, which, as I mentioned, will be probably a couple more beers, and then we will expand into, other drinks. We want to get to the stage where we're not just creating mimics of alcohol products. So, not saying that we will, but we wouldn't just, we don't want to be just creating an alcohol-free gin and tonic or an alcohol-free rosé. We think we will probably always do, ready to drinks, beer bottle serves, but we want to create a range that ultimately allows people to get as excited as they do about alcoholic products when they're not drinking alcohol. And, that could be into any different flavor sensations. As I mentioned, earlier, talking about maybe an umami product, there are so many great food flavors that people are familiar with and love in food, but haven't necessarily drunk in a drink. However, that is a few years from now, and for the time being, we will be producing this recipe and a few other beers, but we would look to extend beyond beer in the next 2 or 3 years. And to finish that, is to really, this is as you guys, we are all part of this movement to change that complete fallacy that is, I'm going out, I want to have a good time, therefore I must have alcohol. And that just nonsense that was possibly more the norm or the understanding. 15 years ago, it's really, you want to have exactly the same sensation in that drink, in that moment with your friends. And you don't need to have alcohol for that moment. And you don't need to have alcohol to create a delicious drink. And you don't need to have alcohol to have a good time. And really, it's all about just giving people the choice to pick up great products, to enjoy themselves when they don't want to have alcohol, because there are an increasing number of reasons why you don't want to have a drink of alcohol in every single round, or in any round at all.